Patrick here. I have a special guest tonight. I'm in Illinois to interview Susan Martin. She is a first-generation Monarch victim and targeted individual. She has memories of satellite telemetry being downloaded into her brain and a life story dotted with trauma and abuse. So, Susan, thank you for sharing your story with us. Why don't you give us a little bit of background information about yourself, and let's just begin by telling the audience how you first found about me and the work that I do.
Well, being a targeted individual, I belong to different groups that are support groups for targeted people, and I have a local person who has become a friend who is also targeted, military fractured person, and he said, I think you should really see this man's website. So that's how I found you.
And, wonderful. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Now, a lot of people are going to be watching this, and they're going to wonder, what is a targeted individual? So why don't you go ahead and explain a little bit what that is?
It's a phenomenon that has been occurring for quite a while. I believe it's involved with the MK Ultra. Goes back to the Nazis, probably goes back further than that. But it's just a vengeance or revenge stalking, targeting for religious beliefs, sexuality, mind, revenge stalking, targeting for religious beliefs, sexuality, mind control, where they want to know what your energy field is doing, if they can use you in some way, testing for electronic harassment weapons, government programs are what's gotten into my life, and it's gone on for 16 years, connected to revenge stalking, but much farther back. I'm 61, and it started when I was a child. So I've been at this game a long time.
Okay, I just want to mention that it is April 21st, 2012. Okay, so let's go ahead and go back to the beginning here. I know a lot of monarchs in my labs are targeted based on their genetics. And a lot of them, it may not necessarily be genetics, or it could be their could be ancestry or their parent background. So why don't you just talk a little bit about your family and why you think you may have been chosen for these experiments?
Well, being born in the very early 50s, this was right probably when Hitler was doing a lot of his youth testing and programming. I am from a German family. I'm German, Irish, and American Indian, which throws a lot into the blood. There's a big mix there. So I think that's part of what happened. Also, I believe that my father, who was never in the military per se, he was growing up a Freemason. My mother was a Rosicrucian. We were not a Christian household. I am the youngest of 4 children. I'm 9 years younger than the one closest to me. So essentially, my siblings were pretty much grown up when I became involved in this stuff. My mother, I believe, was involved with some society people that were involved with heavy military, Illuminati. This is a very political state. so I think that maybe that factored in. I also displayed gifts as a child that probably made me like a beacon to some people.
Well, what kind of gifts?
Well, I would transport items to me in the crib. I had out-of-the-body experiences since I was in the crib. My father, which I did not know until, let's see, about 6 or 7 years ago, I thought he was just a farmer. Did not know he was a welder. Did not know that in World War II, he and my mother and the other kids had lived in Detroit, and they had gotten into society apparently. Why he was there, I was kind of confused when my sister brought up pictures, newspaper articles on my father where he was given awards by the government for developing things for airplanes in Detroit. He was apparently one of the people that worked on them during World War II. There were several newspaper articles, and he was dressed in a suit and looked real like Hollywood. You know, all of them were dressed up. I had never seen him in anything but, you know, street clothes and overalls, so I was like, what is this? And so they said that they lived there, and he was an inventor of some sort. And as far as I knew, he was never in the military. But he did have malaria, which always kind of confused me. Or he seemed to have it. He took a lot of quinine and had all the symptoms of malaria growing up. So this was very telling to me for what I had just gone through in Phoenix, Arizona. So,
well, you've also mentioned that on your father's side there was a possible Nazi Project Paperclip connection.
On my mother's side.
On your mother, okay.
Yeah. They were very, very, all Freemasons, generations back. Abusive situations in the family.
Okay. Now, a lot of monarchs, especially female monarchs, are used based on their parents. Of course, a lot of them are the programming involves. They look for people that are extremely attractive, and as a
all right, keep in mind what James just said on the video before I cut to this. I looked up the formula, okay? What I Googled was what they look for in a Monarch programmee. So this is talking about the features, some of the things they look for. And he said attractiveness. But this doesn't right up front. Well, on genetics, physical features, okay, yeah, well, that would cover that then. But I wanted to get something up here on the screen to back up what James and Susan are discussing in the video. So I'll cut back to the video now and restart it, and we can just play it in the background, kind of scroll through this other.
young child, at least you've expressed to me that was one of the reasons why you were chosen. But later down the road, I don't know what age you said, that you had some kind of health problems, and that possibly caused you to be dropped out of the project.
Right. When I was very young, my first, I would say, encounter with Men in Black, I was probably 3 to 4 years old, and I had little kittens, and I used to just love them and dress them up, and they were the light of my life because my siblings were all grown. I was in the middle of a farm, and they were my friends, and I played with them all the time. And so I can remember this man coming out of our house one day, and this is a recurring horrible memory. And the first time I had this memory, I might say, when it hit me, I fell to my knees. It was such a staggering shock to my consciousness. I was in the yard playing. My mother was talking to this man. He'd been in the house for a long time. And he came out of the house, and she said, like, motion, go ahead. And he bent down, and he took the kitten, my favorite one, out of my arms. And I looked at his face, and I said, no, not my kitten, no. And he had only what I could describe as probably the most sadistic face I'd ever seen. He enjoyed seeing me cry and cling to that kitten, and actually was smiling, looking into my eyes like he enjoyed this. And it was torturous to me, of course, but for him, this was his enjoyment.
And what do you think this MIB creature or man, or I mean, what
This was my first fracturing experience. This was my first trauma-based.
Did it look like a human, or was it an alien, or what?
He was human form, but his demeanor was ugly.
Okay.
This man was cold and ugly.
Are you able to see aura?
Oh, it was awful.
Okay.
Yeah. As a child, I was, of course, crying hysterically, but I was also looking at him thinking, he's a monster. And
Okay.
he was.
Okay. And go ahead, to talk, oh, I'm sorry.
And I'll tell you another little bit of a story of,
Yeah.
my mother used to have a woman who was apparently connected to politics, and I won't say who. She would come in a nice black limousine with a driver, and they would set up tea parties, and they would have tea parties on the front porch, and I was the focus of that, and she was a member of the Rosicrucians.
So go back to basically when they started to drop you as from the Monarch.
Well, I think I was probably around 6 or 7. I was normal looking, still the pretty Edelweiss ideal, I played in a building at our farm that housed empty weed and bug killer containers. And I used to play in there and have memories of, having this white powder all over my skin, and basically got very ill. Prior to that, my thyroid had failed, and I know that repeated exposure to radiation